Hi everybody, this is Chuck Gregory with Springfield 2100. Today we're looking at one of the candidates for Selectboard, and the Selectboard has been trying to bring Springfield back up to where it was before Wall Street did its thing in the 1980s and turned us into the second worst town in Vermont. My guest here today is Bryan Stascavage.
That's correct, yep, Stascavage.
Got it right, the Stascavage, running for Select Board, and we're going to find out what he has to offer to Springfield if he gets elected. Hi, Bryan.
Hi, Chuck, thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. Tell us a bit about your background.
Certainly, so I was born in Long Island and quickly moved to a rural area in Connecticut, a little north of Danbury, where I was raised. I had one stint in college. It was a little bit after the towers fell, and college wasn't going so well, so I decided to join the military as military intelligence. I was deployed 2 times to Iraq, once during the surge in 2007-2008, and another time from 2010 to 2011 as the closeout corps. And in between that, I spent a month in Haiti after the earthquake in 2010. I was military intelligence at the strategic level. I did the review of the intelligence and then showed what I was seeing in the information from a strategic top-down looking viewpoint. After the military, I went to college. I went to a community college in Connecticut and got an associate's degree in accounting. And then I got a scholarship to Wesleyan University where I got a degree in government. After I graduated from Wesleyan, I started just me only company working in the tourism industry up here in Vermont. Just fell in love with the area. And when I was looking for homes to buy, this was during the COVID era when the interest rates were starting to increase. We decided to move to Springfield because we saw a town that had a great history and needed some help. And I would be able to put my degree into action and maybe put some of the ideas I've developed while traveling around the world and see if we could help Springfield out to get to a better state.
Good luck with that. Yeah, you're one of the few people I've met who did not move to Springfield because that's where your spouse was from. There are a lot of ex-military types who are here because they married their woman out wherever they were, and she brought them back. So you actually researched various areas in Vermont before you settled on Springfield. What was it that you obviously saw some sort of potential in Springfield, and what were the grounds that you made your assessment on?
I wanted a town that had great character, had great culture, but as I said, needed some help. I was looking at towns like Grafton or Chester or Woodstock. And those towns, I mean, they're not perfect locations, but they're good. I would just be moving there and moving into the community. Springfield has a lot of potential. It has a genuine purpose here, which is Springfield can be a place where a Vermonter gets their start, where a Vermonter could get their second, third, fourth, fifth chance. I absolutely love that about this place. And so I wanted to come in with the idea of this truth in my heart, which is we can't be the judge in our own cases, that the town is full of people that have all these great ideas and put these great ideas into effect. But with the cost of property taxes, with looking at the numbers for the school and just the general budget for the town, we're getting maxed out. And so I want to come in with the idea of looking at what is here, not with a hatchet, but rather saying what's here and what's working and what's moving the needle, that we need to preserve and that we need to enhance. What has the potential to move the needle in this town? And then I want to come in and try to help to make that potential into a reality. And then maybe the institutions where it's like, you're not moving the needle here, you're in a tough area. Let's see if we can, if we have the ability to, let's see if we can reallocate these resources to a more impactful area.
Yeah. You have children in the school system?
I have made the decision, my wife and I have made the decision that we are going to homeschool. And the reason we're going to homeschool is because while I see the ideologies in play in Springfield schools, I do think there are just too many issues there to put my children there. I don't want my children to be in a place where they're not getting the education and the environment that I think is helpful. And so we made the decision to go homeschooling, and I will say that a lot of families in this valley are making that decision. My children are Irish twins. They're 3 and 4 years old. They are in a class that has about 2 full classrooms worth of children around that age of homeschool. It is this idea that this Vermont individualism idea that if the public schools are not there, that we're just not going to send our kids to there by default. We're going to ensure that our kids get excellent education while we work on trying to improve the public school education system. Because my heart breaks for those parents. They're like, I really want better for my child, but I can't homeschool them. Well, the public schools need to be at a similar level to what folks can do in a homeschool environment. And when that happens, then we'll be on the right path.
Yeah. Well, I thought of homeschooling my own son, but realized that it would end up in murder-suicide if I did. So, and he's not running for school board.
No, I'm not running for school board. So I have softened my stance on the schools quite a bit. They are being asked to do something similar to the police that they are not designed and not built to do, and that's be a parent. And they're doing that out of necessity. They see children that need this help, and it breaks their heart, and it's draining, and it's frustrating, and it causes burnout. And so, but they are trying to. The school is very far downstream of politics. They are not part of politics. Sure. They are downstream of politics. Errors in politics, errors in our culture, end up in our institutions like the schools and the police and our town hall. And so, being upset at the schools for the situation, you're looking. From my personal point, we're looking at the wrong area there.
Yeah. Well, half the time.
Yeah.
So, and I think that really is more an indication of voters seeking revenge, on somebody for these property taxes, which is what the select board is all about. And we have here 3 specific general issues that the select board is dealing with in terms of recovering from what happened back in the 1970s and 1980s. And the first one, as I recall, is the land use planning ordinance. Right now there's a proposal in for a quarry up on I-91 Skitchawag Trail area that's getting a lot of heat from people who live in that area. What are your views on the land ordinance revisions that would allow this or not allow it, depending on how it's resolved?
So for the land use ordinance, there's 2 issues that I see. The one is or 2 topics that I see. The one is the quarry that you're speaking about, and then the general changes to Act 250. I'll speak to the quarry one first. For the quarry, I know the owner of the property. I live across from one of his facilities up on Route 11. I can say on the balance, he is a good businessman. He runs a company it's not perfect, but on the balance, it is very respectful of the fact that he is near, and he knows that his business is near a residential neighborhood. He has that perspective that just because he's running a business does not mean that he's able to do whatever he wants at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Like I understand, these things. So for the people who are like, are these individuals looking to take care of, or are they aware of the property around us? I would say on the balance, yes. It's not going to be perfect, but having had experience with it, it is going to, I don't foresee any issues in that department. In terms of air quality, my father ran a company for 40 years, specifically designed to test, he was based in Westchester County, so there's more business out of New York City, things like asbestos and lead and other toxins that are in residential and business environments. After the towers fell, his company did a lot of business dealing with the air quality for the first responders with the asbestos and the toxins that were in the dust. So for the folks that are worried about the quartz and all that, I am very much aware of the dangers that poses, the mesothelioma and the silicosis and all the other diseases that can come from asbestos and air pollutants like powdered silica that comes from quartz. So from there, my perspective is this: Springfield needs the business. that property is prime for industrial development. It's right on 91. The trucks won't be coming through town. There's no environmental disaster there. That's going to be a big red number on the balance sheet. It makes sense. It brings jobs here and has the potential to bring a lot of lasting, good, middle class, probably union jobs to this area, which we really do want and do need. And so my perspective on the quartz mining and then the proposed industrial development is this: is let's trust the man, let's trust the team once. Let's see if they do it right. If they're respectful, if they're not polluting the air, they're not sending noise all over the place at 2:00 in the morning. If their trucks are not beeping and causing all sorts of chaos, let's let them try to do it the right way. If real true problems come up, crossing red line problems come up, then I'll very much be in the camp, especially for the air quality and the noise. I'll very much be like, no, we can't, this is not happening anymore.
It does strike me that we're talking about a project that's going to be going for 20 years, and 20 years down the road, then it would be redeveloped for housing or whatever. And I have a real hard time looking 20 years down the road because I know where I'm going to be at that time. What can possibly be in place to ensure that rules are followed, for 20 years?
I actually spent quite a bit of time thinking about this, and one of the more fair metrics, especially looking at the situation that's up in Morrisville, I believe, in Morristown, where there's a very similar quarry situation going on. They have a hard time. They say 10 years of quarrying, and then this place will be good for industrial development or whatever kind of development. I would be much more comfortable if there was like a 3 or 5 year, like after 3 or 5 years, the quarry is going to stop. We're going to flatten and make a piece of lands look good, and then we're going to see if there's any interest here for industrial development, business development, housing development. Instead of, as you said, doing 20 years worth of hard, noisy, possibly air-destroying labor. Let's see if we can break it up into chunks. Let's see if you can get in 3 to 5 years, you can get an area over there near 91. So let's see if you can get a 7B exit ramp to service the area, so the rest of the town can use 7A and go flying into town. Like, can we do these things in a shorter time period? But I will also say that there is a saying, which is nobody eats from the trees that they plant, which is we plant trees for the next generation. And so if you are older and you're looking at this and you're like, I'm not going to see the effects of this in 10 or 20 years, I would put that in we're planting a tree so the next generation can eat from it. And that's the kind of thinking I think Springfield needs.
Very good. Okay, thank you. The possible move of both the town hall and Parks and Recreation Department, that has to do with the development of bricks, I understand.
I will be 100% honest, of all the topics in town, this one I put down in a quite low tier. This project to me, at least from the outside looking in and peering around, seems to be like one of those things people are trying to do because they so desperately want the town to be better that they're picking up this tiny little topic. The question I have is moving town hall going to get a kid in a classroom that's going to be fed and well dressed and ready to learn? Is moving town hall going to help people climb out of the cycle of poverty and into getting where they need to go? Is this actually going to move the needle? And the answer to me is this looks like something that towns like to do. Again, this is not my first rodeo in terms of studying local town governments. I did it in Hartwick. I did it all over the place I lived. These sorts of projects come up all the time, and it's just for something for people to chew on and do. But in terms of actually moving the needle and actually getting things going, a little bit of extra real estate on Main Street, the moving it, the only thing that rings true to me is improving access for people with disabilities. I mean, those stairs are pretty brutal. Trying to get it into a facility that has a little bit more freedom of access, I mean, that's is important. But it is, again, are we really moving the needle in town with this? And the answer is, I really don't think so. So in terms of when I'm on the select board, this issue comes across my desk, I will give it some attention, but I'm much more concerned with things that are actually moving the needle. And the things that are kind of like just a little something to do, I'm just going to put those aside.
Yeah. Well, during the shop years, of course, the shop owners, the heads of Bryan, J&L, and fellows would get together every month and decide the issues for the town, like who are we going to run for candidates, for the legislature, and what are we going to do about all the electric wires that are running down Main Street, you know. And they would make the decision, they'd pass it on to the town manager. And at one point, the town opera house, you know, became vacant. And the town fathers decided, let's put the town offices in there. It's been that way ever since. As a member of the Energy Committee that took a look at how the town was using fossil fuels to heat and cool things, we found out probably 15 years ago that the town offices environmentally and in terms of carbon dioxide production were a mess, you know, and I I have no idea how, how the town is going to look at moving it out of there when the town fathers, the shop owners, found it so easy to just say, okay, we're going to use this building for that purpose, and they plunked it in there with no regard to anything else. You know, just that takes care of that problem. Let's move on to the next one. And about 15 years ago, when Park School was being abandoned for all intents and purposes, I suggested to some people down at the community center that they'd have a really great space up there, and all their patrons said, we don't want to leave here. I would imagine the select board is still going to find a lot of resistance from, the attachment there. So, but
I personally, I love towns that have their town hall right in the center of town. I absolutely, the aesthetic, the fusion, the fact that the town, public and private industry, members of the public and private are sort of there together rather than having town hall off to the side somewhere. I personally do very much enjoy the fact that it's on Main Street and has the character there. And so if I have a bias in terms of looking at this issue, that's where I lie, which is let's keep this stuff. Let's focus on the stuff that actually moves the needle. I kind of like the town hall being there. So that's my my first read of the situation.
Yeah, I always think about parking first, and that's a terrible parking space. Okay, moving on from that one, there's the development of Parks and Wilson. Right now, my understanding is they're looking at artist lofts on the ground floor and living space above that. What do you see with Parks and Wilson as far as developing it?
Absolutely. I am a huge history buff. Whenever I'm faced with a problem I'm looking at, especially when I was looking through the Springfield, I wouldn't go back just into Springfield's history. I would go back through all of history and look at examples of times that, the other towns that have faced the issues that Springfield has. And so history is something that I absolutely love. I absolutely love walking through history. I would have loved if that J&L building could have been preserved somehow. Just the grand size of it, looking at the ingenuity and the spirit of building something that big. And now it's just like if you look at it from the sky, it's just a big stained concrete slab now. It's like, I'm one of the people who saw the J&L facility once. I drove through, I saw it, I was like, this is so cool. And then the next time I came driving through town, because, we were buying a house here, it was gone. I was like, oh man. I understand why the town got rid of it. I understand that it was necessary. So taking that pain in my heart and looking at Parks and Wilson, my instinct is to say, let's preserve this. This is a piece of our history. It's got 204 years here. A ton of Springfield souls spent their entire lives here, supported their families here, found their happiness here, whether it was out on the Bass Trail or wherever, if the Bass Trail was back then, but snowmobiling, or whatever recreation, wherever happiness they found, and then to just level it, it seems like a betrayal of all that spirit. But on the other hand, the time to preserve Parks and Wilson happens when it was still an income producing property, when there was still value there, where they could have said, okay, we see the end coming, let's see if we can preserve this as best as possible. But they knew, and we knew, that they had dumped so much into the soil that the facility was falling apart, and then after 2022 it just stayed vacant and nature took it back. I also know, as a student of history, that history and time take a lot with it. There's a lot missing from Rome. There's a lot missing from any great culture. There's buildings and things that they built that just was lost to time, and Parks and Wilson falls into that category. I would be 100% behind Historical Society doing what they did in the J&L facility, taking as much video as they can, taking pictures, even reclaiming as much material as possible, possibly even building a monument or a small structure with that material right there on the property after it's been restored, to honor the people that worked in that building and did all those great things for Springfield. But I want to turn this property it's a great property. It's on the river. It's going to have, it's absolutely beautiful location. I look at it and I go, this would be a great place for artists. It would be a great place for creators. It would be a great place for young families to come and get their start, whether they're based here in Springfield and are moving up through the ranks, or they're coming in and looking for a new start. And then putting some sort of economic activity on top of that, and all of a sudden this property goes from being red on the balance sheet to in the green and contributing. Oh, that's exactly what we need, and I believe we can pay due justice to this 200 in a handful of years by building a monument to those folks.
Oh, very good. People who owned the house, it's been demolished since, but they owned the house next to it, told me once that the very first settlers in Springfield probably had settled on what is now a bit of an island right at the middle of the rapids there. So, and that is the oldest factory in town. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yeah.
So, but, okay. Next. Okay. Increasing the population and the grand list of Springfield.
So Springfield has an opportunity here, and this is really the core of what I would like to bring to the table as a member of the select board, is that I have a plan. And the first thing I would like to do is figure out why things are working the way they are and how they're working the way they are. So an assessment of what's going on, and a deeper assessment of like, why is it this way? And then from that first step, the second step is going to happen pretty much at the same time, is I'm going to learn what's possible and what's impossible. I know Spock uses this phrase. I know Sherlock Holmes uses this phrase. It's once we determine what is impossible, whatever is left, no matter how improbable, lies the answer. And so I'm going to use that theory by looking at what Springfield's doing and what is possible with the mandates, with all the pressures and all that stuff. And then, as I spoke about a little bit earlier, the step 3 is then going to be reviewing all of the nonprofits, all of the government organizations, everything that we're doing to try to break the cycle of poverty that's in Springfield and help people get their start. I'm going to be reviewing those, working with those individuals and those institutions, again, to assess what is working, what is not, and if you are moving the needle. The idea that I would like to bring to the table is this, that for all of these social programs that we have, I believe that we can gather all of the different activities that whatever nonprofit does, and we can put them into different buckets. And we can have an essential bucket, which is things that people need no matter what, just as a base of human rights. Food, some reasonable access to housing, an ability to find a job or get the education to find the job. These critical core things that are necessary in order for a person to thrive. And then in the next bucket, based off of choices of that individual, understanding that they're operating in a decision world that is vastly different than I'm making up on Damon Road. I'm fully aware of that. But people still have choice. Even in the midst of drugs, even in the midst of trauma, even in the midst of all of these things, people still have choice. And if people are making good decisions to try to move themselves to being a contributor to Springfield society, I would like to set up our systems to reward those individuals by saying that if with the decisions you're making, with access to bucket 1, the essentials, and saying that, okay, you are showing your kids are going to school, they're dressed, they're fed, their homework's done. You're making the applications, you're making the attempts to try to become a contributor to the society. We are going to help you get there. This whole idea that people need to save Springfield, that somebody needs to come in and save Springfield, that people need saving, that's the wrong mentality. You can't save anybody. What we can do is we can help people. We can help people get to where they, and for most people in Vermont that I've seen, they don't want somebody else to do it for them. They just want the help. They just want to say, I had a tough childhood, I didn't do well in school, I need a little bit of help to get a skill, so that I can put food on the table while learning this skill, and I'm going to pay back in while once I'm on the job and I'm paying taxes and I buy a piece of property and I'm contributing back in. Absolutely, we're going to help. But for the folks that have given up, for the folks that believe that they are entitled to these things without having to try to move themselves to being into the contributor area, I say you have access to bucket 1, the essentials required for human existence. But for buckets 2, which is more of the skills based, and then bucket 3, which would be more of the advanced stuff to try to get people, on their way out on their own doing thing, you're only going to have access to bucket 1. We're going to start rewarding people who are making good decisions and are doing the right thing, and we're going to help them. And for the folks that want to continue creating problems in this town, you are only going to have access to bucket 1, and it's just going to be the bare essentials. And that sort of mentality, I think, is what is going to help start moving the needle on the cycle of poverty. That's going to start, we're going to stop inflicting the crimes and the horrific things that happen to your generation and to my generation. We are not going to put them onto the next generation. That here's where the wall is, here's where it stands, we're going to stop doing this. Our children do not have a choice of whom they are born to. We don't get to choose where we're born, when we're born, or to whom we're born. You don't have a choice there. If anybody had a choice, would you decide to be born on Valley Street, or would you decide to be born in another more affluent area of Vermont? The answer is very simple, and yet a whole bunch of people are born into these situations where you have drunk people screaming at all hours of the night, the police are there all hours of the night, you have caretakers who are strung out on all sorts of drugs, and we are seeing it in the schools, we're seeing it in the police, we're seeing it at the town hall. And for the folks that are contributing to that problem, you're only going to get bucket 1. For the folks that are trying to get out of that chaos, who are trying to get up, who are trying to get themselves going to where they want to be so they can find their true happiness, that is where I would like to focus the resources and get you out. And that's going to take the nonprofits and the government institutions coming up with these buckets, and then also coming up with the qualifications for each of these buckets. And that's something that I would like to bring to Springfield.
Sounds like you should volunteer for bucket 1 to provide some sort of germination ground for people to be able to get out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I worked for Department of Health for a number of years and found out that the crabs in a bucket theory really accounted for an awful lot of the lack of progress for people in the most stressful situations. However, there are keys there that can be used to help people establish their own lives in bucket 1, and it's a matter of identifying them and supporting them. So maybe you could get the select board to work on that when you get in.
Oh, one example I have is that one of the most sensitive things to me personally is noise. In a chaotic, noisy environment, sometimes it's good. Sometimes I specifically seek out that environment because creativity can come from there. But people need peace and quiet. The reason that the wealthy have 1,000 acres and live in the middle of it is for peace and quiet. They will pay millions of dollars for peace and quiet. And so when we're looking at the apartments that are on Main Street and we're looking at these buildings, one of the key things is to increase their energy efficiency so we're not losing air conditioning, we're not losing heat. One of the things that also happens is they become noise proof. And so if you can close your doors, you can close your windows, and you can cut out that neighbor that's screaming his head off, at 2 o'clock in the morning. If you can close that off and get yourself a good night's sleep, your quality of life improves dramatically. This is one of the things that goes into bucket 2 or 3, which is if you're showing that you're doing the right thing, instead of trying to renovate a whole apartment building, let's renovate 5 apartments. And let's renovate the 5 apartments of the people who are showing that they're doing the right thing, so they can live in peace and quiet, their energy bills go down, and they can turn around to their neighbors and go, if you make the right decisions, this town is going to get you where you need to go. If you're drunk at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you're screaming, or if you're high on stuff and your kid's showing up smelling like pot, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We can't reward that behavior anymore. We're going the wrong direction here.
Jeez. Well, you do know, to steer the topic a little different, the governor has told Springfield that it has to come up with 531 houses, affordable homes for moderate income families. Okay. I was on the commission that first took a look in and provided an initial report and then disbanded. And that's not going to do much for the grand list. What we lost when we lost Precision Valley was the equivalent of 5,800 homes. Okay. So we're not going to get the grand list back by accommodating 531 people. But there is probably enough room within half a mile of downtown Springfield to create or recreate the housing for 531 families. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that affordable housing for moderate income families depends on two things in Vermont, the two biggest barriers. One is the price of houses, okay? The average house in Vermont goes for about $420,000, okay? The down payment is the other one, and that nowadays is 30%, which means that somebody would have to come up with roughly $140,000 in down payments in order to buy a house in Springfield. The good news, though, is that last year, 2024, the average price of a house in Springfield went for $159,000, which means they'd only have to come up with $38,000. Okay, $32,000. But if that down payment were taken care of through some other means, the people that were buying that house would be paying about $1,150 a month on the mortgage, which is less than what apartments on Main Street, some apartments on Main Street are going for right now. So what can Springfield do to get would-be homeowners into that $1,150 a month payment, given that the system right now that's structured says that can't happen?
The key to home ownership is having is moving into the middle of the working class. It's always been that way. Either you got your home from your family, or you got a job that allows you to pay for it. I know that the barriers have been less or higher depending on the time history in the United States you're looking towards. In terms of housing development here in Springfield, I'm 100% behind it. I am 100% behind it. I believe that adding homes and affordable homes, specifically homes that first-time home buyers can buy and that people can buy to get themselves out of the cycle of poverty. Before I came here, I actually went on Realtor.com to get my updated view on the real estate here. Not much has changed since I peeked back in a month or two prior. We're kind of in the dead time right now, winter, so the inventory obviously is going to be lower. It's going to start increasing in spring. But you're absolutely right. There are some homes here that are out of reach of somebody at the lower working class level, but there are plenty of homes that are within reach in terms of getting to the American dream. For me personally, I got around the huge down payment because I had the housing benefits that come from service. That's probably why we're seeing a lot of former military coming here, is because these homes are right in the wheelhouse of what the benefits that we get for assistance on getting a lower interest rate, which lowers that monthly payment, and then also having backing so we don't have to put such a large down payment down. I did put a down payment down, but not what somebody else would have had to pay. So that was a huge help. So that is one avenue. The other avenue is getting those jobs here. If you have a quarry, those are good jobs. And then especially if you get industry here, those are good jobs. People will then be able to afford those houses. But yes, I am very much for building more housing here in Springfield, and I would also be looking and asking for towns in the area, Chester and Woodstock and other places, to embrace the changes that are coming to Act 250. The theory that I see with the changes is that Vermont is trying to take the European village model and adopt it here in Vermont, which is we have a very dense town core where there are a ton of structure and services. Some people require more structure, some people like that kind of structure. You can have an urgent care center. You can afford, our businesses can now be profitable to run a small grocery store, to run a small pharmacy. All of these things that are now so expensive to do in the Vermont's model, because we're all spread out across the entire state, by having these concentrated hubs of service. And then if you want to live in a rural area near that town center, it's up to you to get from point A to point B into town, this hub and spoke model of service. You know, even if you're outside the range of the internet, now you can get decent satellite internet. So now you can have healthcare over through your computer, which is a huge cost saver and a huge efficiency increase. Vermont has been very good at adopting the VA medication model, where you can get your medication in the mail instead of you having to drive in. Now it just comes with your daily mail, which is a system that's already in place. So for the housing, we need more housing, not just in Springfield, we need more housing in the surrounding area. Some of the other towns need to start picking up the slack and putting in more housing, especially more affordable housing in their area. The ugly term here people like to use is not in my backyard, NIMBY.
Yeah.
I am very sensitive to folks who have such a high selfish self-interest that any intrusion on my property whatsoever means that absolutely no progress can happen. That does not sit well with me. There is a concept called burden and undue burden. There are things that are undue burden. A quarry throwing a whole bunch of poisonous smoke across your property, that's undue burden. Having what is essentially the same decibel level as somebody whispering something in a library every now and then, which is what the sound's going to be based on the science that I looked at, I'm sorry, you don't get to shut. I don't believe that's not an undue burden that allows you to stand in the way of progress that's going to help Springfield. And so for the folks who are like, oh, they're going to build these buildings to change the nature of the town. Yes, the wheel of time of history moves. That's what happens. We need to adopt to it. We were going to businesses and saying, what color is your terrace going to be? What's your trim going to be? What's it going to look like? Springfield doesn't get to negotiate with that anymore. Chester doesn't get to negotiate with that anymore. The nature of these towns has to change because the nature of the world is changing. And we can do it within a level of reason, but the fact that Vermont is dead last or near dead last in economic output because people can go to a town select board and say, I don't want this happening, and an entire industry just has to move, can't build here. When people are struggling to find housing and they're like, I don't want an apartment complex near here, and that gets shut down, and now housing costs are completely out of control, your personal self-interest cannot place undue burden on society. You cannot be, I truly stand against the folks that want to say that my personal self-interest means that the entire society around me needs to bend to my will. That doesn't sit well with me. We have to get a lot better at determining what is due burden and what is undue burden. And for these small towns that are saying no to this housing increase, I'm sorry. The nature of the world and the nature of the place is changing. We can do it in a European style model. We can try to concentrate things so we preserve as much beauty in the countryside, absolutely. But these hard no's that are coming down with quarries, with buildings, with industries, with all this stuff, I'm sorry, it's just really tone deaf to me at this point.
Mm-hmm. Well, I did point out to the commission that Springfield could provide affordable housing to moderate income families simply by providing the down payment cost, because we move about 330 houses a year in the real estate market, which means that in 2 years we would have 660 first-time homeowners with affordable housing. Okay, I pointed that out to the commission. The commission also had a developer in from Rutland who was doing not low income, but affordable income housing up there. And he spent about 3/4 of the meeting talking about how you line up the financing and the various types and so forth. Okay, at the end of it, I asked him, okay, so you decide to sell this property so you can use the money to make more affordable housing elsewhere, really good, but what guarantees that the housing you just sold is going to stay affordable? And he didn't have an answer for that. And I proposed to the commission that we devise an affordable housing category for these homes that these first-time home buyers would be buying, so that they would basically be socking their money into their own savings account. But at the same time, if they ever ran into foreclosure, they'd get their principal back. Because when you have a savings account in a bank and you stop paying into it, the bank doesn't grab your money and say, see you later, Jack. So I don't know where the select board might go with something like that. But I did also point out through my own mathematics that if the town paid the down payment on these houses at market value, it would cost property tax, it cost property owners in Springfield 37 cents a year per house. And the reaction I got from a member of the commission on that was, I don't want a stranger to have my tax money buying a house for a stranger. So if you get on the select board, you can deal with that.
That sounds like something that would belong in bucket 3. If somebody has demonstrated and they have a good paying job, they have their life in order, they're making good choices, and they come to the town and say, hey, I need help with a down payment on this house. That is something that I would be I would be more than happy to explore and see if it could be done in a way that's responsible to the taxpayer.
Yeah.
Even if it is 37 cents, these things tend to grow. There's a thing called mission creep. I experienced it in Haiti. All of a sudden we started looking for things that weren't there. And it's like, guys, we're feeding people here. Let's keep it down. So the idea of helping people move into homes, again, that word help, absolutely. We're not trying to save people. We're trying to help people get to the American dream.
Yeah.
That's a bucket 3 thing. I would be into that, especially if that help was then somehow repaid. That this is maybe either no interest or an interest rate loan that's at like inflation or something like that. Just off the top of my head, something like that could work, and it does apply. It does fit into that bucket 3 type philosophy that I have. But again, this is not something that bucket 1, somebody who's literally tearing the walls down in their apartment, is then we're going to help them get into a home. I mean, they're just going to destroy the home. We can't do that. So it's as far as like a perk for people who are moving out of the cycle of poverty, getting that education, getting that job, holding that job, getting good reviews from that job. The teachers are saying they're showing up to the parent-teacher conferences. The kids, like and they say, listen, I need $50,000 to make this down payment on this house. Can you help me out? The town will be like, yeah, we give you a loan or help you out with a little bit of that. Something of that. Yeah, I'd be very much open to hearing stuff about that.
Well, this developer pointed out, he said that, people are already paying $1,200 a month for rent, Why does a bank need them to plunk down 30% on a house when these people have demonstrated 5 and 10 year track records of faithfully paying the rent, And the thing is that if the town designated a class of housing, that the buyer could say, okay, I'm buying this place for $175,000. I want to put it into the affordable housing category so that when I sell it off, I get my principal back plus cost of living adjustment plus improvements on it. And the buyer picks up the mortgage at the same rate that I've been paying all these years. And so it would be a voluntary thing on the part of the seller, and it would certainly ensure that the town or that the housing market does not go rendering these houses unaffordable for first-time buyers. I don't know if you ever read the book Going Up the Country. I'll lend you my copy. It's about the flood of young kids who came into Vermont back in the 60s because they heard land was cheap, and you have this entire yeast of intellect and emotions and drives and everything that shows up, and really good stuff filters out towards the end of it, and the riffraff get turned off by the 20 below and they leave, for some warmer state. But, Springfield, I feel, really could use a lot of yeast in that regard. And if you make housing affordable for somebody who's always demonstrated fiscal responsibility and has never been able to afford a house because of the way the system has always been set up, you wind up getting a homeowner that is so super invested in Springfield that they'll do the sort of thing that new arrivals like you and what used to be a new arrival like me, would really like to help out doing. So.
Yeah, with Springfield, especially with Act 250, that was kind of the 60s and 70s magnum opus, saying that we have all this industry here, we have all of this economic activity here, but we also live in an absolutely beautiful state. Let's make sure that we are developing responsibly so that we're not destroying. Because also during that time period, there was I believe that's when the EPA first came to, and I believe the preservation of the federal and the state parks, that was kind of forming into its modern version that we see today. That was all happening back then. And so the spirit came into Vermont, and Act 250 was a way to kind of manage this. And it worked because the most critical piece of that Act 250 was that Vermont had a strong economic base, and therefore it could afford to have a luxury like Act 250. Mm-hmm. Act 250 now is an act that's out of place. It has turned from being into a tool used to manage industrial development into a place where people are trying to establish their fiefdoms, and now we're seeing the negative effects of that. So the folks that came in the 60s and 70s, I mean, I remember growing up and learning that one of the few places that a gay couple could get actually married was in Vermont. And I was like, I mean, just from a human rights point of view, I was just like, this is thank you, Vermont, for doing something and leading the way on this. The fusion of human activity and nature is something that Vermont has done very well, and I'm deeply appreciative of that. But now I believe that Vermont has something new to tackle, and that is, let's see if we can actually solve this cycle of poverty thing. Because funnily enough, as counterintuitive as it sounds, the issues that are in Springfield do not have to deal with want and need. It's actually, how do we manage prosperity? The United States is a rich, powerful nation. People see their peers that they grew up with go make ungodly sums amount of money and move away and do things. And so it feels like we have a two-tiered system in this country. We have people that meet the ground floor and enjoying this prosperity that's going on, and then the people that are underneath it. And in a time of prosperity, the focus goes from making sure that the people who are doing well stay well, because in a time of struggle, like we have to beat Hitler, or we have to beat racism or slavery, all the effort goes into what the country needs to do to survive, to struggle, to deal with this issue. But now that we're in a time of prosperity, we're doing the same exact things the Romans did once they had conquered the known world, which is they look inward, they look at themselves, and they go, how can we be better? Because now for the average American, and for America in general, the only opponent worth our time is ourselves. Some people call it nasal gazing. I call it there's a concept in Islam called jihad. There's lesser jihad, which is the violent one that everyone thinks about. But the more important jihad in Islamic faith is greater jihad. That's looking at yourself and finding out where, their word is sin, but a secular word would be error. Look at where the error is inside of ourselves, us personally, and our institutions, and how can we do better. And in Springfield, Vermont, the greatest source of purpose is breaking the cycle of poverty, and that's what I'm focused on.
Mm-hmm. To get back to the home ownership thing, I tend to be more of a pessimist than you, having grown up in a rather impoverished but very large family. I always wonder, okay, so how long are these resources going to last? And one of the big ones, of course, is petroleum fuel, which is why the Housing Commission looked at everything within a half a mile of downtown, because despite our hills, it's walkable. People can get to where they need to go in a half mile in about 10 minutes. And when you have housing areas that are more than 3 miles outside of town, you wind up being enslaved to having a vehicle or having some sort of public transportation system. And okay, so where am I going with this? This is why, in terms of developing the housing within that half mile area, you're talking about either existing homes, you're talking about apartments, or you're talking about new homes, or you're talking about new developments. Like there's a 15-acre tract within 10 minutes of downtown that would be eminently walkable to school, hospital, town offices, everything downtown, which would require massive infrastructure development, and then the building and what have you. So the question is, how can this be done without sacrificing one's soul to the predators on Wall Street?
Yes, that's what economics is. It's the scarcity of resources and how we allocate them. If you're talking about the sense I get from you is maintaining that European style type community where you're able to walk from your house, your village house, to the pharmacy, to the supermarket, to the town hall, and back to your house again without having to use fossil fuels. Mm-hmm. I understand. I'm a conservationist. I understand that fossil fuels are extraordinarily dirty. I know that we as a people we're just gonna have to learn how to move on from them. Eventually, we're gonna have to learn how to make plastics and provide energy that's cheap without pulling this stuff out of the soil, because eventually it's just not gonna become economically viable. We're gonna have to do deep sea drilling. I mean, it's coming. Everyone talks about peak oil, and it keeps getting pushed back because the technology advances. So there's some hyperbolism in this that needs to be tapered down. But Springfield does not have the luxury right now to look at something like fossil fuels. Right now, Springfield's main concern is keeping energy costs down, so that my personal energy bill, and I heat my house with wood heat, so no electric heaters.
Mhm.
I've got a powerful computer because I'm starting a YouTube channel, but we use some energy, but our energy has doubled since we've been here.
And
Our,
that's
our bill
important.
our bill has doubled since we've been here, and so once Springfield is better suited, and we can take on the expense of trying to get more efficient, cleaner energy sources, which I'm all for. I mean, I would much rather prefer to have a solar panel rather than burning a fossil fuel. I completely understand that. But it comes down to, as you talked about, not costing people. If all of a sudden energy prices go up even higher, it becomes even harder to keep your car filled with gas. We're putting pressure on the most vulnerable. So in terms of ranking this issue, it's there. I would prefer to use cleaner sources, obviously. I mean, I think most anybody would. But the more concerning thing to me is I don't want people saying it's going to cost me $150 to fill up my car. I can't really do that because it's still required. It's going to be maybe we don't have the heat up and we can't use power. When it gets expensive like that, the people who are most vulnerable are the ones that pay the price. If people who are wealthy want to contribute out of their own pocket to build huge solar farms and things like that, because out of their own goodwill they want to do this to try to help out with the energy prices, I mean, I'm all for that. But if you're going to start taxing the most vulnerable in order to pursue your ideology, that doesn't sit well with me. It's the same thing in the schools. If your ideologies are hurting the kids in the schools, I'm sorry, you don't get to use that. It just doesn't sit right with me. Your ideologies need to play out in the R&D. Pharmacy companies don't take a drug and go hand it to a bunch of kids and go, we hope you don't get sick.
Mm-hmm.
Why are our ideas of education, our ideas of discipline in the schools, of structure in the schools, why are these things being played with as if they're not harming the people that are there? It just does not sit well with me. If people could figure out a way to get us to be more energy efficient without, this is the John Rawls theory of justice rule. If you want to improve the quality of energy in the town, you have to do it in a way that's at least neutral to the most vulnerable that are here. And if you can figure out how to do that, I will be on board and help you with where you need to go. But if you're just looking to crash fossil fuel usage, which is then going to cause all sorts of things to go really expensive and hurt people, I'm sorry, I'm not going to play games there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Europe, Scandinavia has come up with housing design that reduces energy usage by 80 to 95%, which in Vermont, that would be a gift from heaven. And it would be worthwhile investigating how this can be done. There was a proposal, I think they call it the carbon reduction bill, to reduce carbon emissions in Vermont by 30% within, I think it was 10 years. And it struck me at the time that if Vermont paid for everybody's heating for 75% and said, okay, you're on your own for the last 25%, that would result in people suddenly realizing, hey, I can do a whole lot of carbon emission reduction myself in this last 25%.
I went to a seminar at Wesleyan University while I was there, and it was titled something along the lines of the best ways to get these efficiencies to lower our carbon footprint. And all of the solutions that by science, by practice, proven on the ground, actually do something, not pie in the sky stuff, is all the stuff that's not sexy. It's all the stuff that there's no showmanship here. Mm-hmm. You really don't get great video footage of replacing the windows in the building. And yet, if you're looking at 100% of the stuff you can do in an old building to get it to be energy efficient, changing the windows and improving the insulation gets you like 80 or 90% of the way there. Mm-hmm. 80 or 90% of the recoverable efficiencies in these buildings to get them to be in an acceptable standard is just basic building material science. Yeah. It's not all these flashy things that are expensive, that are complicated, that have all these points of failure. None of that stuff works for a reason. That's just showmanship. That's just people looking to get into the spotlight. The actual nitty-gritty of getting my house that I live in from being a wind tunnel to being secured was done by the previous owner. It was windows and it was a little bit of insulation. And and now it's almost like hermetically sealed. Like I put on my wood stove, it's a tiny little wood stove, little handful of wood heats the house for a few hours. It's crazy. So you don't need to have all these fancy devices, all these things like monitoring. No, if you want to be energy efficient, if you want to contribute, if you're a homeowner, update your windows, update your insulation, your energy prices will go down and things will be a lot better. Not these high cost, not these highly debated things. None of this stuff works. Look at the science, look at what actually moves the needle on lowering energy bills, lowering our carbon footprint, and it has absolutely nothing to do with what's going on in the state. It's just simple, down to earth decision making that when you have some money in your pocket to renovate, if you put a little bit of money here, you're going to get all that money back and more. It's like put away the crazy fancy stuff, put away the stuff that gets you on TV, and focus on the stuff that actually moves the needle.
The big part, though, the hard part is having the money in the pocket.
Yeah. And then again, that's stuff that again we can help people with. If somebody's like, my energy bill in winter is $700 a month because it's 10 degrees outside and it's a wind tunnel in here. Yeah, that's something we can help you with. Again, bucket 2, bucket 3 type stuff.
Yeah. And there's a psychological component too where you don't pay $700 a month. You pay $4,200 every 6 months, and that's what hurts you.
Yeah.
So it has to be something that is almost immediately accessible, but winds up getting paid off in the long run. And getting paid off in the long run means that you have to sell the investors on a slow but steady return.
Yeah, and for people who live in a dense area too, once you improve the insulation in your home, it doubles as a noise dampener, and your quality of life inside the home goes better as well. So these smart, scientifically backed things that actually work on the ground, that I'm all for that. But for the carbon footprint nonsense that's going up in the state, I see people who want to be seen as trying to help rather than actually helping.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. So, thank you very much. I appreciate it, Brad. This has been Springfield 2100. Stay tuned for the next candidate.
To order copies of this program, please call 802-885-6248. This program was created using equipment of SAPA TV. The views and opinions expressed in this video are not necessarily those of SAPA TV or its staff. Visit us online at www.sapatv.org. Thanks for watching.